What is up, my fellow andronauts? Let's talk about iron. Iron is crucial for the production of testosterone, but in excess can also be detrimental. So let me show you exactly what the research shows. So iron has been shown to increase testosterone when there is an iron deficiency. Iron is a constituent of the respiratory chain and cytochromes. It plays a role in the enzymatic cofactor and is implicated in DNA replication or mRNA transcription. So the respiratory chain is here in the mitochondria, the electron transport chain of the mitochondria, which is the first step of steroidogenesis. So LH stimulates the LH receptor, which then stimulates the uptake of cholesterol into the mitochondria to be converted into pregnenolone. So this is the first step of testosterone production. Then pregnenolone is transported outside the mitochondria to the endoplasmic reticulum, where it's converted all the way into testosterone. So the first step in the mitochondria is where the first step of testosterone synthesis begins, and that's where iron plays a role. So sorry for this blurry image, but when you look at the mitochondria, this is basically what the mitochondria looks like. You have the electron transport chain here at the sides of this mitochondria. So this is complex 1, complex 2, and complex 3 of the electron transport chain. There are iron-sulfur clusters in these complexes. So you need iron for these complexes to work properly for energy production. So what happens is the body is breaking down fat and carbohydrates, and it donates electrons and hydrogens onto NADH and FAD, which is vitamin B2 and vitamin B3. And then FADH2 and NADH donates those hydrogens and electrons to the electron transport chain. And this is where you need iron to accept those electrons, to transport it, and to pump the hydrogens into the mitochondria to create a potential for ATP production. All right, so we need iron for energy production, the first step of steroidogenesis. Then iron is also really important for the antioxidant enzyme called catalase. It uses iron as a cofactor, and catalase converts hydrogen peroxide, which is a free radical, into water. So it deactivates a free radical. You need iron for that. It helps with energy production and it reduces free radicals. As you can see here, that iron deficiency lowers testosterone. When they make animals iron deficient, it leads to low levels of STAR and 17-beta-HSD in iron deficient animals. So STAR, let me just show you, is this first enzyme, which is the rate-limited enzyme in steroidogenesis, which transports cholesterol from outside the mitochondria to the inside of mitochondria to be converted into pregnenolone. So when you have low expression, you can't transport the cholesterol inside for the production of testosterone. Then the 17-beta-HSD is this enzyme here, which converts progesterone into testosterone. So when this one is reduced, you have an increase in levels in progesterone and a decrease in testosterone. You might see in blood work high levels of progesterone, low levels of testosterone, which could implicate that you have low levels of iron or low intracellular levels of iron due to oxidative stress, for example. All right, low iron causes low testosterone, and then supplementing iron can then help to restore testosterone levels. The same thing in humans is that iron deficiency also lowers testosterone, and then getting intravenous iron increases LH, testosterone, and fertility markers in these people. You can see that hemoglobin went from 8.1 to 15.9. Testosterone went from 12.22 to 15.9, almost 16. LH went from 2.2 to 3.8. Sperm count almost doubled. Sperm motility more than doubled. Morphology almost doubled as well. So testosterone went up, although it's not like a massive increase in testosterone and LH, there was still an increase. This is because when someone has an iron deficiency, they're not just deficient in iron. They have other micronutrient deficiencies as well. And this is why you only see a small increase in LH in testosterone. Or it's a decent increase, but it's not like a massive increase because they have other deficiencies as well. But regardless, low testosterone, low iron can lead to low levels of testosterone, and then increasing iron intake can increase testosterone. Also been shown that lower ferritin and transferrin saturation correlates with a lower percentage of free testosterone and bioavailable testosterone. This is basically iron deficiency markers when you have those low. But then on the flip side, you have iron excess can lower testosterone because iron accumulates in the pituitary and the testicles. You can see the higher ferritin goes, the more it accumulates in the pituitary. But as you can see, the ferritin numbers here are very high. It's like 1,000 here. Most people were on average like 1,000 or 2,000 or like 4,000. This is like very high ferritin levels, which is very commonly seen in people with hemochromatosis. Right? This is not just from eating too much meat. And in obese individuals, you have an inverse correlation between ferritin and testosterone. So you can see these guys had 83 ferritin, 180, and 384. So this was ferritin, and you can see that testosterone correlated negatively with these ferritin levels. But you can see the difference is like a 30-point difference, right? So it's a big difference in ferritin, but a small difference in testosterone. And LH didn't really move all of that much with higher ferritin levels. So it would appear, even though you have high ferritin at almost 400, doesn't mean it's really going to lower your testosterone. And the reason why these guys most likely had elevated ferritin is because they had elevated inflammation. But I'll get to that in a second. And also here, obese individuals have slightly higher iron and lower testosterone. So BMI, the non-overweight was 21 BMI, the overweight was 28 BMI. So this wasn't even like obese, there was just like overweight individuals. Ferritin was a difference between 200 and 240, and then transferrin saturation was a 34 and a 32. So none of these markers would indicate that these people had iron overload. This was a marker of oxidative stress, and this was testosterone. Nice difference there. SHBG, the testosterone difference was about 100-point difference. So it was 477 nanogram per deciliter in the not overweight, and in the overweight was a 362 nanograms per deciliter. SHBG was also a little bit higher in the people with lower iron, and then free testosterone was also a little bit higher in the people with lower iron. But then again, the reason why these people had slightly higher iron is most likely because they had elevated inflammation. People with obesity tend to have more inflammation than those that are normal weight. This is why ferritin is higher, transferrin saturation is lower, and testosterone is lower. So although this is a correlation between ferritin and testosterone, it's not some clear evidence that iron is lowering testosterone. It's rather that obesity is negatively correlated with testosterone. And then it's also been shown that phlebotomy increases LH and testosterone. So this guy had insanely high levels of ferritin, almost like 5,000. And then he started donating blood therapeutically, got it down to 500, and then all the way down to 18. And so LH increased from 0.4 to 3.4, all the way up to 5.5 when ferritin was at its lowest. And then testosterone increased from 49 to 560 to 590. So that seems to be, if ferritin is at 550, testosterone didn't really go higher if ferritin went even lower than that, despite LH going up. So if you catch your hemochromatosis early, and you can see that ferritin is like really high, and you are still under 30, you're old of age, and you start donating blood, the chances of iron accumulating in the pituitary can be reversible, right? So the chances of iron accumulating in the pituitary is not that high, and you can reverse it. So hemochromatosis, like extreme elevation in iron, can lead to low levels of LH and testosterone, and then donating blood and getting rid of that iron can increase your LH and testosterone. But the older you get, the more iron accumulates in the pituitary, the less reversible this becomes. Even by donating blood and getting your ferritin like really low doesn't guarantee that you're going to get an increase in LH or testosterone the older you are. To get a complete picture of your iron levels, you want to do proper iron testing. You want to look at ferritin, transferrin saturation, soluble transferrin receptor, copper ceruloplasmin, complete blood count, and hsCRP. Because ferritin can be influenced by your inflammatory markers, the same thing with transferrin saturation. So transferrin saturation is the transport protein of iron in the blood, is called transferrin, and how saturated that one is. Do you want to look at that one? And the soluble transferrin receptor is the receptor on the cell that is responsible for the uptake of iron to transport it intracellularly where it's necessary to create iron. So if soluble transferrin receptor is elevated, it could indicate that intracellular levels of iron is on the low side. Ceruloplasmin is involved in transporting iron from ferritin onto the transferrin transporter to transport it into cells. If ceruloplasmin is low, chances are your transferrin saturation will also be low. Complete blood count to see how high your hemoglobin and hematocrit is, and also the white blood count to see if you have overactivation of the immune system, and then hsCRP to see if you have oxidative stress and inflammation. So if you want to do proper iron testing, you want to do a panel like this to actually see what's going on inside a cell and why you might have dysregulation between ferritin and transferrin. And if you want to learn more about the blood work, I have done a complete masterclass on blood work, which includes looking at nutritional markers, oxidative stress, everything that you need to test, how to interpret it, what the optimal reference ranges are, everything. I've done a masterclass on that. It's in the Tester Tribe. Link is in the description below if you want to check that out. If you see your ferritin is elevated, don't freak out. Do the other testing before going crazy and donating blood, because that could make your symptoms worse. Oftentimes, high ferritin is just a sign that you have inflammation, not because you have an iron excess. And let's say your ferritin and transferrin saturation is really high, then you can always test genetically if you have hemochromatosis. But the point here is, do not unnecessarily avoid iron-rich foods. Iron is necessary to enhance your testosterone production. It's necessary to create testosterone, but an excess can also be harmful. But you want to be healthy overall. But the key here is to be healthy overall. Alright guys, so I hope this video is helpful and insightful and you learned something new, and I will check you in the next one. Cheers.